Hi guys, Gabrielle Celeste. Welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Sisters podcast. Guys, it's a solo episode. And you know what I was thinking? I don't know that I really enjoy recording solo episodes because there's just not as much banter. And I'm like, oh, it kind of feels like it's a little bit more work, but I don't mean to start this off complaining. I think I just missed my sister. So anyways, this episode, we're going to be talking about halfway through 2026 mid-year astrology. And I'll probably be dropping this on the 21st of July. So it's still like these are all upcoming transits per se. And if you're watching on YouTube, please excuse me looking at the camera and looking at my monitor because I'm reading off the important dates for the remaining months within this year. This will be like, I would say they will include like the key dates for the month and then the remaining month episodes. So like August astrology, September astrology, and so forth. Those are going to have all of the key important dates. So we're just highlighting, I guess, the most important ones and the ones to look forward to. So in order to make this episode probably the most effective, what I would suggest is maybe taking a calendar and, of course, your birth chart and just noting down these dates that I'm going to speak to for each specific month. And just know that the energy of those days is going to be a little bit more heightened. It's not bad, it's just a little bit more charged. And because of the way astrology works, you're probably going to be feeling it 3 days before, 3 days after, 3 to 5 day window. Always give yourself that. It's never exact, but when it is, it's pretty fascinating. But because the energy of the planets tends to build up, I think that's important to pay attention to and to consider if you're feeling a little bit off. So, as a highly sensitive person, psychic, intuitive myself, I know I'm feeling the bigger transits at least 2 weeks to a month before then. And the more that you expand your intuition, you do the shadow work, you're likely to feel the same way already, if you don't already, I should say. So it's really interesting because I'm recording this after we recorded the the August episode, so August astrology for 2026. And we speak to that too. And in that episode, I'll go back and correct it because it's not yet dropped. But I say, I think it's like August 21st. It's like the start of fall. No, girl. No, that's Libra season and that's in September. So when you listen to that, just be sure to know that we are still going strong in August. It is still very much summer. And so the Libra season actually kicks off the fall. So that's the fall equinox. So pay attention to that. And then just in general, I feel like astrology is the month. July is the astrology month for the podcast. We're intuitively led to just discuss what topics come about. And we have some really fun guests lined up for the next couple weeks after we get through the month of July. It's really interesting because where we're at right now, where we've been with respect to like the first half of 2026 to the second half of 2026, I just feel like the second half is flavored very differently. And it's a weird year, but it's also like a year of pivot per se. And this is so interesting because I did like between the end of November of 2025 to the end of January of 2026, I was offering like year ahead readings. I think I did like 70 plus, you guys. Like I was literally physically here in the month of like December, January, more so January. Like I was on Earth, but like I really wasn't on Earth because I was like just my consciousness was like in the ethers for sure, reading and doing that many readings per se. So, anyways, all this to say, when I was doing those year ahead readings, and your readings can change. I think this is important to note. If you're doing a lot of shadow work, if you're doing a lot of work on yourself, predictions may not necessarily continue to apply to you. If you're going internal, if you're looking at your shadow, it's because you can jump timelines. And in many ways, not always, like some transits aren't necessarily going to apply to you in the way that they would have had you not done that work. So anyways, I did a good amount of those readings. Every single reading, with the exception of like maybe like a handful, I would say like 5 to 10 of those 70 plus that I did, I would say it was pretty consistent that the first half of 2026 looked very different than the second half of 2026. So we're going to go through the key dates for each of the months ahead, and be sure to see if you have anything in your chart that's hitting specifically. So like if you hear like Scorpio, and you know that you have like 3 planets in Scorpio, and you know that an important date's coming up for that, be sure to see where it's affecting you in your birth chart. And then this episode is dropping on the 21st. So within like 7 days, this is the most important, one of the most important transits that I'm going to start off with the month of July, is that we have the nodal shift into Leo and Aquarius happening on July 26th. So that officially kickstarts eclipse season. So go ahead and look in the show notes. What I'll be doing is these seem to be really popular about every 6 months because that's when the eclipses tend to occur. It's not always. You can have up to, like, I want to say 8 eclipses in a year. We don't have that this cycle. I do believe we have that in 2027. I'm about to start looking at 2027 astrology quite closely because as an astrologer, you want to look at the astrology the summer beforehand, which is crazy that I can't even believe I'm looking into 2027 astrology. But I want to say we have a significant amount of eclipses in 2027. So I'll be sure to offer that this second to last week in July towards the end of August because it's a whole new cycle. And it's a big deal because we haven't seen this in pretty much 9 years, and the nodes haven't been in the exact position in about 18 years that we're about to see with the Leo Aquarius axis. So I think that is, it's going to be different. I think it's about to get like weirder than it already is, and that's so funny to say. And the reason I say that is because of what Aquarius represents. And Leo is about the self, Aquarius is about the people. And I'm going to go over the themes that they represent based on the houses that they traditionally rule over. So even if, say, like Leo is in your like 10th house or Aquarius is in like your 4th house, the themes that I speak to based off of 5th house and 11th house themes, so Leo is 5th house and Aquarius is the 11th, they're still going to apply in some capacity. Before we get there for that nodal shift on the 26th of July, which is a Sunday, this entire month we've had, and I'm looking at my notes because I don't want to get this wrong, but we've had a wide like basket configuration. So any of the shapes that the basically planets and the stars and asteroids they make in the sky, it's essentially geometric shapes, and it's like sacred geometry is the easiest way to describe it. So you could have like a triangle or like a star or like a rectangle. And in this case, for the entire month of July, we have what's called like a basket configuration, and it stretches across the sky. So you'll feel it this entire month, and it's at the earlier degrees. So Jupiter's going to be at 3 degrees of Leo. Uranus is at 4 degrees of Gemini. Neptune is at 4 degrees of Aries, and Pluto is at 4 degrees of Aquarius. And all of that put together, it encourages us to gather up our thoughts, our intentions, our dreams, and refocus on our self-esteem and make a clear decision about where we're going and what we're taking with us before we pretty much close out this month. So in a lot of ways, July presents the energy of like beginning of the end, especially it's like pre-eclipse season because August is eclipses, and I'll provide those dates here shortly. And I don't know, it just kind of feels like once the second week of July hits, which is part of the reason that we're dropping this episode now, you feel that shift. So by the time we get to December, I would love to hear your feedback. Send us a DM, send us an email on what your thoughts and just your take was on 2026, because it just feels like it's going to be a year that we look back and be like, okay, like not as harsh as maybe 2020 or 2025, but it just feels like it was different. So coming back to those 5th house themes that Leo rules over, with the nodal shift going into Leo and Aquarius, the north and the south node, the 26th of July. We have the 5th house, which traditionally is a Leo ruled house. So it's creativity. It includes themes of childhood, inner child, romance, pleasure, play, creativity, performance, sports, celebrations. It's a house of joy. So vacations, holidays, amusement, laughter, popularity, prizes, toast. These are all themes that relate to the 5th house. Pregnancy is a big one. So if you have your 5th house in Leo, this could be a year in which you get pregnant because Jupiter's running through it, or you could just birth a new creative project. It's a house of self-mastery, so literature, publication. It's a fame house as well. And it also rules over the heart, the upper back, spine, blood, and circulation. So, in some capacity, these themes could apply to you or where they possibly are within your chart. So, again, it's going to be specific to your chart, but it's good to know where this lands. And then, with respect to the 11th house, which is an Aquarian house, Aquarius, so this rules over the collective, public, groups, peers, society, stepchildren, foster children, humanitarian beliefs, political beliefs, civic matters, democracy, which, if you live in the US, a lot of our listeners do. You're kind of seeing that happen in real time. It also covers revolution, bohemianism, quirkiness, eccentricity, and also electricity, networking, the internet, automation, assembly lines, outer space, air travel, and so forth. So I can guarantee you all of those things in some capacity will be in our faces in the news over the next 18 months for sure. So that is, I would say, the most upcoming important date for the month of July. If you're listening to this in real time, or if you go back, go ahead and revisit the dates of the 26th to see like what was happening for you around that time. And then when we get to the month of August, on Monday, August 11th, we have literally, like, this is all happening on the same day, you guys. We have Mars entering Cancer. Mercury in Leo is going to oppose Pluto in Aquarius at 3 degrees. Then Mercury in Leo is going to trine Neptune in Aries at 4 degrees. And Venus in Libra is going to trine Uranus in Gemini at 5 degrees. So not only is this an emotionally heightened day, this is also going to be a very like day in which you can get a lot of downloads, I would say. And it's 2 days before the eclipse, because on Wednesday, August 12th, we do have a total solar eclipse at 20 degrees of Leo. So if you have anything at 20 degrees in your chart, specifically 20 degrees of Leo, that's going to be activated. So that entire week, you guys, and really just August in general, it feels very pivotal. Anytime I, on a personal note, have looked for myself to the month of August, I can't see past it. It literally looks like a big black hole. And that's for me personally. That's not what it's going to be for everyone. But August I knew was going to be very charged. So yay, August. Can't wait to get past this month for so many reasons. I do think it's going to be a good month though. But it's just like, it's a vibe shift to say the least. So that Monday, the 11th, and then that Wednesday, the 12th, big days. And then the Thursday, August 27th, we have a partial lunar eclipse at 4 degrees of Pisces. And I know that's kind of confusing because the nodes were, in Virgo and Pisces. And then they moved from Aquarius to Leo. I wouldn't think too much of it. Just for those who have been going through it since the end of 2024, i.e. me, this is like a final goodbye send off to the Pisces Virgo nodal eclipse axis points that have just been really, really challenging. So anyways, eclipses, they are timeline shifts. They are days in which you can tend to get into more accidents. I had a sibling that got into a car accident on literally the day of an eclipse a couple years ago. I've been hospitalized on an eclipse, literally. They typically tend to be more negative, but I do think that they can be quite positive too. So, August, baby. And then the last important day of August is Monday, August 31st, and that's Jupiter in Leo is going to trine Saturn in Aries at 13 degrees. That day right there feels like it's kind of like a check-in point for all of your hard work up to this point. In 2026. I don't necessarily think it's bad, but it's almost like a day in which there's a nice balance between growth and limitations and kind of meeting in the middle. And check to wherever Aries is at in your chart. And this day specifically, I would not be surprised if some similar themes, because again, it is an eclipse month, mirror whatever was happening for you specifically around February of 2026. So around this time at the end of August, it's going to be really good for you to reflect on what has really happened for you in the last 5 to 6 months and what you want to, again, take with you and leave behind as you close out this year. So then we get to the month of September, and September 10th is a really charged day specifically. So not only is this the new moon in Virgo, Venus is going to enter Scorpio, Mercury is going to enter Libra, and Venus in Scorpio is going to directly oppose Chiron and Taurus at 0 degrees. So about 7 days after this, Chiron is going to go back into Aries and finish up its ride there for the last 7 years. And this right here is preview energy of really what Chiron in Taurus has been about since the summer solstice, but also like what's coming up ahead. So it's like past energy, but also preview energy, because as soon as Venus enters Scorpio and Mercury enters Libra, that is the preamble to the major retrograde season that we have in October and November of this year, primarily happening in the sign of Scorpio. So Scorpio is all about death, transformation, rebirth, and oftentimes Venus retrogrades are not the easiest types of energy to work with, but they can also be very enlightening as well. So pay attention to what's going on for you for around September 10th. And then when we get to October 2nd, I really wish this was like the third that I could speak to because I wanted to make a Mean Girls reference. We have Mercury in Scorpio is going to square Mars and Leo at 2 degrees. So all of the earlier degrees. And also on a point, and to that point, a lot of the astrology for 2026 and 2027 is happening with the planets at the earlier signs of the constellations that they're in. Whereas for the last 2 years, it's been happening at the later degrees. So there's a lot of familiarity that 2025 up to 2025 has brought us. But again, like the symbolism around 2026 astrology primarily is like a lot of beginning of the end, endings, bringing about new beginnings, not literally like the world's going to end, you guys, but more so that it's just a lot of change that's happening at a very rapid speed, and it's probably going to continue to happen at that trajectory as well. And so on October 2nd, that Friday, aside from Mercury and Scorpio squaring off with Mars and Leo at 2 degrees, we have Mercury and Scorpio squaring Pluto in Aquarius at 3 degrees, and then Mars and Leo trining Neptune and Aries at 3 degrees. So squares are more challenging energies. Trines are really harmonious energies. Squares are basically three signs away from each other. This is how I remember it. And then trines are 3 signs away from each other. And the way that you can remember is squares typically tend to be opposite elementals, whereas trines tend to be the same elements per se. So Mars in Leo is a fire sign. Neptune in Aries is a fire sign. So all of that energy on that Friday, the 2nd, it's a lot of like friction between like speaking versus reacting, curiosity versus ego, and balancing all of this, strategic thinking versus impulsive action. And this can manifest as like heated conversations, defensiveness, saying something that you can't necessarily take back. So it's a lot of communication energy, and maybe speaking to things that have maybe been ignored up to this point. So September is kind of like October. October is a nice little break, but not much because we're going into that literally like the Venus and Mercury retrograde in Scorpio like days later. So Saturday, the 10th of October, Venus stations retrograde at 8 degrees of Scorpio. So look to wherever Scorpio is at in your chart. And something to note that's really important about the months of October and November is Venus retrogrades in the same sign every 8 years. So I want you to think back to October and November of 2018 and what was happening for you around that time. Venus retrogrades for 40 days. And I would not be surprised if you have similar themes in life coming up around that time that maybe began in that 2018 period or are just being mirrored back to you or coming to a completion of sorts. I specifically remember, you guys, that was the kickstart of the start of my spiritual awakening. I had been doing a lot of work prior to then, but because my Scorpio and my chart falls in my 8th house, it makes sense as the rebirth. And fun fact, whatever signs your 2nd and your 8th house are in, more so the signs of the constellation are going to require you to really focus on what they represent because that's going to affect your income. So like, for example, mine's Taurus in the 2nd, Scorpio in the 8th. That's all rebirth energy. So constantly dying, guys, ego death. And it makes sense that Venus retrograde kickstarted my spiritual awakening and what was happening for me in that period of time in my life. So should be quite interesting. And then the 24th, another Saturday, that's when Mercury is going to station retrograde at 20 degrees of Scorpio. So October is pretty much coming for all of us. We just got to get through it. November's kind of a little bit easier. And then December is actually quite chill. And it's so funny because whenever I do year ahead readings, I never really get much information / clarity on December. It's because it's a mixed bag. So it could really go either way. So I think by the time we get to the end of the year and come to December, we're just going to be really ready for 2027 and whatever that's going to represent. So November's key dates are Sunday the 15th. So that's when Mars and Jupiter are going to be conjunct at 25 degrees of Leo. And a Mars and Jupiter conjunction in Leo is actually really confident, expansive, and it's creative. So these energies of these planets, when they combined, it's a really nice invitation to take up more space, to trust your gifts, to act on your vision, and it amplifies courage, leadership, and momentum. And I'm actually really looking forward to that. So that's something to look forward to once we get through the hardships potentially of October and those retrogrades. We have a nice, fun, creative spin that we can look forward to for November. And then on the 29th, which is a Sunday of November, the Sun in Sag is going to trine Saturn in Aries at 8 degrees. And then we have Uranus and Gemini trining Pluto in Aquarius at 3 degrees. And honestly, you guys, by the time we get to November, this feels like payoff for the work that you've done in 2026 leading up to this point. So this specific transit rewards hard work, maturity, and it can bring about opportunities per se. It's not so much about luck, but more about like earned expansion within yourself. So December overall is a chill month. And then in December, again, it's more of a mixed bag. It really didn't have much. The 10th, which is a Thursday, Saturn's going to be direct. So it's going direct at 7 degrees of Aries, which is nice. And then honorary mention, the winter solstice is on the 21st. So happy birthday, Capricorns. That's a Monday. And by that point, I think we're just going to be in the swing of things. So that's what we have for this year, the second half of this year. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you feel about 2026 in general. It feels like it's going by so quickly. I mean, I know in Chinese astrology, it is the year of the fire horse, so it's meant to go by very quickly. Personally, I just feel like, oh my gosh, I feel like, I don't want to say I can't keep up, but it's definitely keeping me on my toes per se. So anyways, be sure to check out the links for the eclipse readings. I would love to read for you, especially as we have a whole new vibe shift with the nodes of fate going into Aquarius and Leo. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We're looking out for you guys on the podcast this month with all of the updates with respect to what's happening in the sky. And I'm actually really excited for the second half of this year because truthfully, all of the challenging transits are already behind us. So there's something for peace of mind. And so that's what I got for you. So I will see you in the next one.